Hi, I'm Lisa Cohen with the Washington Global Health Alliance, and we're here at the Life Sciences Innovation Northwest Conference for 2014, and I am delighted today to be talking with Rhonda Rhyne, who's the CEO of Prevencio. And Rhonda, I am really curious about your journey to get to this point, where you are now, and tell us about all the various stops you've had along the way.
Well, I'd love to. Thank you so much. It's, first of all, an honor to be here at Life Science Innovation Northwest, a great conference, the place to be. But I started out, I guess in my childhood, with my mother telling me I could become anybody and achieve anything that I wanted to in life. And that was very empowering. And I left for college at 16 and wanted to go to medical school, and decided pharmacy path would be the way to go, because if I got a biology degree and decided not to go to medical school, then I would just have a biology degree and really not a profession.
Right.
And pharmacy school would really prepare me foundationally for medical school much better than, say, an undergraduate degree in biology. So I got my Bachelor of Pharmacy. In the process decided that I really didn't want to go to medical school, so at least I had my profession.
Yes.
But I really did not want to practice pharmacy. So I had a fork in the road, and that fork in the road, I decided that I would go into the medical device industry. And everyone tried to encourage me to go into the pharma industry because I was a pharmacist, but for a variety of reasons I wanted something more challenging. So I went into the medical device industry, actually with a company that was local in Seattle, even though I was not from Washington. It was Quinton Instrument Company, and they did diagnostic treadmills and cath labs. Spent some time at GE, and went with a small biotech company after that, and helped them do some research and development and sales and marketing, and had a shot at becoming their CEO. And did that in the early 90s, and was very successful over a very short period of time. And then had an opportunity to go with a publicly traded medical device company in San Diego, and went on board as chief operating officer and then promoted to president. Was with that company 12 years as president. We sold to Sonosite in 2009. And in the process, I moved up here and started to look around at the landscape in Seattle for my next opportunity, and was fortunate enough to be introduced to the entire life science community, which was very supportive, and introduced to Prevencio along the way, and assumed CEO role and director about 10 months ago.
And I want to get into Prevencio a little bit, but you talked about that fork in the road, and it sounds like there have been a number of them for you along the way, and we all face those. So can you talk a little bit about what, you went against every grain at that point, all of your training up to that point, you know, what I'm sure that people were pushing you at first to consider medical school, and then you went to pharmacy, and then out of that it wasn't going to be a pharma company, it was going to be devices. What was it that appealed to you in the device sector?
It was more challenging, it was riskier. It would have been a logical path for me to become a pharma sales rep and go up in those ranks, which wouldn't have been a bad path to take, but there was something more challenging about medical devices and just the entire development. And you can have a big impact in pharma, but there's just something about having that medical device. And once I got into the medical devices, then I was hooked on it. And I did take a detour to do biotech and grow skin with culture technology for a while, but I came back to devices, and really specifically cardiovascular. And I don't know, maybe it's because it was a tougher road.
Yes.
It was just a bigger challenge.
Right. That's interesting, and you like those risks. You embrace those risks.
Yes, and I think that's very important. And I will say that I think there are not as many women CEOs because they don't embrace the risk.
Right. Right. I think, and I want to also talk about your book in a moment, but let's talk a little bit about Prevencio and describe the product that you're working on and what drew you to Prevencio.
Okay. Well, it's in the cardiac space, which I've spent the bulk of my career, so I was very interested in that. 1 out of 2 people die from cardiovascular disease. It is the leading cause of death in the United States, so major problem. I wanted to move out of the box selling, the $50,000, $100,000, million box, and move into the biomarkers, a blood test. There's a lot of power in our genes and proteins. And at Prevencio, we're developing and commercializing a multi-protein test for cardiac diagnostics for chest pain patients in the emergency department. So it was in a space I knew, but it was entirely new with immunoassays and proteins in the blood. And so many oncology companies are finding treatments and diagnosis for cancer using multiple genes and multiple proteins. But cardiology is lagging behind in that, and I felt that it would be something new and interesting, but I could really make an impact in healthcare.
You must have had a bit of a steep learning curve to move from one, from working on the replacing skins and things like that to moving into the biomarkers field. Again, it seems like you just look for those opportunities to learn.
I learned from both my parents. It's real easy to pick up a book and read. Mm-hmm. And we've got lots of books that'll tell you how to do it, and it's fun. So it's a sixth sense of fun.
So this is, as you mentioned, it's a huge issue, not only in the United States, but in all the developed countries and increasingly in the emerging markets, cardiac issues. And so this seems like it could be a huge cost saver.
Tremendous cost savers. Right now in the emergency department, we do in the United States alone about 1 million cardiac catheterizations. They total cost $39,000 each. At over $1 million a year, that's $39 billion to the U.S. healthcare system. But what's tragic is up to 50% of those are done without need.
Yes.
So we could save tens of billions of dollars in the U.S. alone. Besides the cost savings, there's a 1% mortality associated with a cardiac cath, morbidity between 2 and 10%. So there's not just cost savings, but it's also for the patient safety. Yeah. And as you say, in emerging countries, I was shocked that cardiovascular disease was such a problem, because you think of people eating at McDonald's and unhealthy, fat-loaded French food, but I believe in the emerging countries because they don't have a choice on the type of food. Right. So we have a very low-cost, simple blood test that could really help.
I've got to ask, as we've learned more about the difference in terms of warning signs between men and women for if they're having a heart attack, is there a difference in the diagnostic at all, or is it?
It depends on the diagnostic that you're using, but it's not as significant as the change in the signs. Okay. Women will show up with a positive EKG, they'll show up with positive troponins, some proteins, or might be a slightly different normal level, abnormal, but for the most part, they're the same.
Where do you see the company in 5 years and in 10 years? What do you hope for?
Yes, that's a great question. In 5 to 10 years, I think we're in an excellent space in vitro diagnostics to partner and exit with a larger company inside of 5 years. You can't plan on that, so you have to plan for commercialization, and I love commercialization. It's where I've spent most of my professional career. But nowadays, it's so expensive to hire a sales and marketing team and to go that route. If you can put it in the hands of a bigger player, you can either help them commercialize it or go on to the next venture.
So I do want to spend a little bit of time on your book, Keys to the Corner Office, which tell me about what inspired you to write this, what you're trying to accomplish with the book.
Sure. Well, in 2009, after CardioDynamics sold to Sonosite, I had decided to take some time off. For one, I had met my husband and gotten married while I was at CardioDynamics, and I lived in San Diego and he lived in Seattle, so we had never lived together. So we thought it'd be very nice to take a couple years off and travel. But as he always says, you always have a project going on. So I had wanted, probably 5-6 years prior to that, had thought about writing books and thought about writing self-image books, companion diagnostics for children, and they're really not, they're companion volumes for children and their parents, because I believe a self-image, positive self-image is the most important aspect that a parent can give a child. And if a parent doesn't have a positive self-image, it's really hard for a child to have that. But that would have involved co-writing the book with a trained, I felt, at least psychologist. So then I thought about first-time managers. I had a lot of experience with inexperienced first-time managers and felt like I had some good wisdom and experiences to share with them. But then my husband and I were talking, and leadership, there's quite a few books out there, but for women leaders. And a lot of the things that I learned along the way, the mistakes I made, that could be a real contribution to women rising through the ranks and becoming CEOs and board directors. So, launched the book project.
And so what did you find? Were there some surprises for you along the way in writing this? What did you uncover for yourself?
I always joke that I never took the time to go to therapy. I don't think I needed therapy, but it was really therapeutic. I was able to really reflect on the things that I did right, more of the things that I did wrong, how I would redo them. I interviewed over 100 women for the books. The subtitle is Success Strategies for Women by Women. I didn't want this just to be a book with my thoughts. I wanted it to incorporate the experiences of other women. And I'm very proud to have put my experiences with theirs and have it be a collaborative effect.
It sounds like you won the lottery a bit with your parents, that they were incredibly supportive, and that's often not the case.
Well, I did not have
you and me.
I did not have a perfect childhood, and I actually talk about that in the preface of the book because I think that's very, very important. Mm-hmm. My mother was exceedingly positive and very encouraging. I had a highly intelligent father who was a perfectionist. I think I got some of that, and he ended up taking his own life when I was 10 years old. So I had tragedy and challenges, but I think because my mother was so positive, I just found the positive in it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like just a wonderful book for so many people to read. You know, in the life sciences and for me in the global health fields, there are not very many women at the top. And there certainly isn't diversity. And how have you navigated those waters?
Very carefully. You're right, and what's interesting is that there are a number of initiatives, not only in the United States, but around the world, to get more women in executive positions and on boards, because across the board, companies perform better, higher return on equity, return on investment, better governance, lower fraud. It's probably name at least 20 metrics where companies that have women in executive management and on their boards do better. So to navigate those waters, you really have to go out and take risk. Mm-hmm. And not as many opportunities are offered to women, and some of the advice in my book from myself and other women is take the nastiest, ugliest opportunities out there, because some men aren't taking them, and you can go in and really make a difference. So again, you've got to throw caution to the wind a little bit, and especially for a woman. Women are not as much risk takers as men, so a woman has to throw caution to the wind even more. Mm-hmm. But once they take on an assignment, it is so important to just dig in and keep persevering, because you wouldn't have been offered the position if they didn't believe you could do it and you hadn't built on experiences to be able to do it. And once you do it, it's tremendous. And I think about Mary Barra, who became CEO of General Motors and inherited just a mess. Right. But she's digging in, and 2 weeks on the job, she had all kinds of fires, but I have full faith that she's going to keep at it until she resolves the problems.
The stakes seem higher for women because there are fewer in positions, CEO positions. So, for example, with the New York Times, with the editor who just left, and it's all this, speculation about identifying as a woman first, and then as in terms of her job skills afterward. And do you think that's just a necessary evil of moving up, you know, and making this more, having women more commonplace in these positions? Are we just going to face this sort of highlighting of gender first and skills second?
Probably for a while, and that's just the way it is. I mean, Hillary Clinton will say the second time around she's not going to worry as much about the comments they make about her style and her hair, and I think that's a part of the experiences with throwing caution to the wind and getting more comfortable with risk. You also have to get more comfortable with yourself, and women tend, I believe, to worry more about what others say about them. They don't let things roll off their backs as much, and we truly have to be more like men and get out there and be more competitive. And if someone says something about you, just blow it away with a breath of kindness or make a joke about it, and know your value, and don't allow the world to take away from really your accomplishments and what a valuable contributor you are.
What is it that you think, if you're speaking to this this audience, which is still vast majority men at this terrific conference, what do you want to tell them about what a woman brings when you're bringing a woman into leadership or onto the board? What's the ad for the company?
The ad is a stronger, more profitable, better governed company.
And where does that come from? What do you know why that? Has there been research about that?
There's been a lot of research. There's a term called groupthink, where you get like people together and they just kind of go together in their thinking. And it's been proven on boards that are not diverse. There isn't as much discussion around strategic issues, and one person will make a recommendation and everybody just goes with it.
Yes.
And by adding diversity in there, and it's helpful if you have more than one diverse thinker, more than one woman, or more than one minority, that you just get a more robust, richer, better decision. So I think groupthink is a big part of it. I do believe that men and women think differently, and so that brings diversity and just different perspectives.
Right, a richer discussion about it. Yeah.
I don't want to say that women are more ethical, but let me make one more point. There has been research on the fact that testosterone, which we know men have higher levels of testosterone than women, makes them riskier, and sometimes they take riskier decisions for companies, and a lot of the economic turmoil of 08-09 they felt were due to all the risky decisions that the men leading the companies made.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So what do you, let's bring it back to the conference here. Why do you come to Life Sciences Innovation Northwest?
Because it is the leading life science conference on the West Coast every single year. There are great presentations, I mean, just innovative companies, excellent CEOs that are presenting. You can really meet a lot of different people and watch presentations, look at different business models, and really gain a lot of insight on other companies. It also gives you a chance to showcase your own company and get input from other CEOs, attract potential investors. The speakers are wonderful. The keynote speaker this morning, John Crawley, was just incredible. Sue Siegel from GE Ventures spoke at lunch. So it's just a rich 2 days. Too bad it can't be 4 days.
Right, exactly, if everyone had the time. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know that the winners of the Women to Watch Awards are going to be getting your book, Keys to the Corner Office. I know it's available on Amazon, and I look forward to reading it. So I just thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate getting your perspective. So,
well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to meet you.
All right, so this is Life Sciences Innovation Northwest 2014, and we'll wrap it up there.